The music always gets me pumped. Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at @JustinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode. This is going to be a little bit of a catch-all because one, there's not a lot going on, and two, we got a little bit of stuff to talk about. So we're going to make an episode, okay? Because I'd rather be here than not, So make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and get into it. Let me know in the chat box how you guys are feeling about today. How you guys doing today? You guys having a good day? Let me know. I am. I'm having a good day. So I hope you are as well. C2 Dallos says, much love from AZ Mex versus USA. Gonna be good. Those games are always fun. They really are. Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm trying to figure. Okay, hold on. I don't know what this says. Okay. Can you guys see me and hear me? Because I feel like you guys can't, as usual. Because I see that. Oh, I made a mistake. Hold on. Hold on. I didn't turn off the Wi-Fi. Give me a second. I know you guys are like, what's going on? What's going on is I was so busy dancing that I forgot to do something important for the stream. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Whatever. All right. So hopefully things are better now. I don't know. Who cares? All right. So yeah. Let's get into it. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Zaha links. It's hotting up. It's getting hotter. Those are what the reports are saying. I hope not. I hope not. We want these Zaha links to get cold, y'all. Cold as ice. Okay. But that's the word on the street, is that the links are getting hotter and hotter, and Arsenal are really interested in bringing Zaha to the Emirates. No. We're also going to talk about mascot gate. If you guys have been under a rock, Arsenal have been murdered on Twitter because somehow they were mistreating and rude to a young mascot via social media post. And everybody and their mom turned around and slammed our players, only to be absolutely done by that mascot's father, who said that the young girl had a good time. So we'll talk more about that in depth as well. We'll also talk about Declan Rice's latest and Saliba. Back in training, more like in the gym than actually in training. And now there's reports coming out that Saliba's willing to like put his body on the line to be available for the run-in. Here we go. But yeah, we do have things to talk about. But yeah, so let's get into the Zaha news. I feel like, oh yeah, it is freezing. Why is it like this? Why is it always frozen? We had like one day of good internet. I'm going out and coming back in. Stay right there, guys. I'm gonna go out and come back in. Are we back? Hopefully. I don't know. Anyways. Yeah, so Zaha. Yeah, about that. So the word on the street is that Arsenal are really interested in Wilfried Zaha. This is coming from Foot Mercado. Arsenal are growing more and more serious about signing Wilfried Zaha. His contract is running out at the end of the season and has made him an interest to many clubs across Europe, with Arsenal being one of them. The French outlet claims that Arsenal make a serious offer to the player is deemed more and more likely as the weeks progress. Not good news, guys. Not good news. I think my thing would be about Zaha. You guys know I did a whole stream on this, is that I just don't see how at his age he's going to learn to track back, how to not blame others, how to have a better attitude, how not to be annoying. I just don't know how he's going to do that at his old age. I just don't know. And I can see, a little bit of the interest just because he's free. But other than that, I don't really see what he would give to us other than a headache. I really don't. Depends on what the wages look like as well. I mean, I don't know, y'all. I really don't know about this one, to be honest. But the only thing I can see is that maybe we're looking for a free option, um, so that we can go big on midfield. But we better be going big, big on midfield. I mean, Rice and Caicedo type big, big, because his he's so annoying, and he's just not the type of player that I feel like would fit into the culture at Arsenal. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Laughing Man says Zaha scores goals. Let's actually look at his record lately. Let's actually take a look at that, because maybe that'll make me feel better about it. Not saying it's gonna happen, but you just never really know. And Arsenal like a free signing. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, the only thing that I like about him is he's a gooner, but he's also been at Manchester United, so it's kind of like, are you really? Like, Okay, this season he has 6 goals and 2 assists in 24 matches played. I think he's quite injury prone, like, he gets, like, little injuries here and there, like, little muscle injuries, it feels like, little ankle stuff, you know? Most like Kulusevski, Benrahma, Antony opponents, and statistically, we know what he's really good at, and that's the touches, successful take-ons. He's a dribbler, right? And one thing that this Arsenal team does not have is a really good 1v1 dribbler. Now, that doesn't mean that Saka and Martinelli can't dribble. We just know that there's a difference between like pure dribbling talent and, players that can get by their man. You know what I mean? And he's a tricky player. He's an individualist, but Arsenal play a very team-like game. And I'm just wondering how he would like fit in, can you guys tell I'm not interested in this like at all? Like, I'm not feeling it. On a short-term deal, like 1-2 years maybe, but like I think my overall feeling on this is like, please don't. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't know why. He's not my kind of guy. Well, let's see. So last season, he scored 14 goals, which is quite a bit. But I mean, if you're the main man at your club, you should be scoring like 14 goals, right? I mean, let's keep it 100. You're the main guy playing every single game. You should be scoring like 14 goals, right? In the season before, he had 11. So, but he's also a winger, and I don't always expect wingers to score like 20, 25 goals. So, I mean, he has end product. Yeah. And he's 30. I don't know. I don't like it. Boy says, skip this Zaha news. It's late for him in Arsenal. I got to go into it. It's what's out there on the streets, word on the street, He says, what exactly can we do to make this Zaha news go away? I have no idea, but every single season we're linked with him. It's crazy. Fabricio says, I feel like Zaha could be one of those players for us who can create something out of nothing. I don't want us to sign him, but I feel like we do. If we do, there are some positives. He has he's a very individualist type of player. He can make something out of nothing. So there are some like positives, but like, do they outweigh the negatives? Keshimomo says, in context, Jess, in the season where he scored 14 goals, Crystal Palace finished in the bottom half of the table. So is the context that like he performed in a really poor Crystal Palace team? Because I hear that. Amira says, tell us how you really feel about Zaha, Jess. It's just not my thing. It's just not my thing. Jess Jay says, will Zaha fit the Arsenal system? I mean, if you bring in Zaha, you're basically saying that you're not looking for somebody to fit within the system. You're looking for somebody to be individual outside of the system. Because the thing about Zaha, like has already been mentioned, is he's an individual. He can make something out of nothing. And so we don't have a player like that. So maybe you're looking for somebody that you can bring on to kind of do something different. But you still got to track back. You still can't be standing there with your hands up in the air going, "What's going on, guys?" Like, no. If Zaha did that to Gabrielle, I'd be on my way down there to that pitch. Like, hello, this is not Gahey, okay? This is not Anderson. You don't speak to Saliba and Gabrielle like this, going like this. Like, no, I'm not into it. Especially after it was your fault. Hello? Chris A says, I've waited for this day all my life. Elliot says, your face says it all. Dislike. It's not my thing. Gent says, it's not going to happen and it shouldn't. I'm tired of this nonsense. Who are you telling? C. Walder says, he doesn't seem to have the mentality, doesn't track back, plays quite an individual game. Plus, he's a bellend. I don't know about the bellend part. I don't, but I agree with everything like else. Laughing Man says, assist. Wasn't he the most fouled player in the league a year or two ago? He could give us at least 2 good years. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Jordan Hill says, did Arsenal actually put in an offer for Zaha? No, but the reports are saying that Arsenal's interest is growing and an offer could come soon, so yeah. Aha says, Zaha can be a decent plan B option up top, but I don't think he should be our first choice. Boy says, just give Reece Nelson a new deal 2 or 3 years. The most recent reporting on Reece Nelson is that he has been offered a new deal, but no agreement has been met. So I don't know if it's a difference in like the wages or the length of the deal or something, but Reece Nelson hasn't signed a new deal, but he's been offered one. So I still think there's a chance that Reece Nelson leaves this summer because even though he wants to stay, like, wouldn't you want to give your career one last hurrah, try to become a starter somewhere, you know, so I don't know if Reece Nelson will 100% be here, but I feel you on the just keep Reece Nelson thing. Chris said it's destiny. It's meant to happen. I hope not. Magzino says, Jess, you said yesterday Nelly and Jesus are big game players. When Melly has 3 big 6 goals, Saka has 10, 3 assists, has consistently been amazing in those games. Big fan, but that was biased. But I never said I said Saka, to this. I think the thing with Saka and the big game thing is it's not. Maybe it is a recency, from my perspective, but I just think Martinelli strikes me as the type of player in a really big game that is going to give us the goal. I don't know. They both do it. Maybe it is recency bias, but I'm not saying that Saka is not a big game player. They all are. Maybe you're right. But I don't hate Saka or anything like that. Like I don't want people to think. Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that? The light went out. What's going? Why am I so confused? What's going on? I don't know what just happened, but like everything just went off, or the light just went off. I wonder if it's dead. I don't care. We can keep going. We're just gonna keep going. Who cares? It's already a shambles. Let's keep going. The light went off. Did you guys see that? But you guys can still see me, right? So it's like it's fine, right? Everything is working against me right now. Just J says the winger market must be dead if we're still linked to Zaha. Exactly. Newman says if a big club wanted Zaha, they'd have bought him by now. Even Newcastle would think twice. C. Walder says Pepe or Zaha. Neither. If you guys can still see me, we're just gonna crack on. Magzino says just based on what Saka has three times more big goals and has always turned up in those games. I get he missed the pen, but it's not fair. I don't even think West Ham is the big game that I'm talking about. I'm talking about like Anfield away from home, very big game. And so, yeah, it's I think it's just more based on that than West Ham. I actually don't begrudge Saka like at all for missing that penalty. Like players miss penalties. So it wasn't really in regards to like the West Ham game at all. It's just, Anfield, you know, that was a really big game. And I thought Jesus and Martinelli really stood up in that game where Saka kind of struggled a little bit, but then in the same breath, Saka was really good against Man United away from home. We didn't win the game. So yeah, maybe it's just a little bit that, but it's not about the penalty or the West Ham. It's not about West Ham. Like it's an important big game, but I'm talking about something different. So yeah, Tamina says William Saliba is back in training. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. Ify says, hear me out. This news is a smokescreen to get Diaby and Asensio. Hopefully, I'd rather have them than him. Make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's keep on going. The funniest thing that happened yesterday. So yesterday I could see it happening, and I knew when I woke up in the morning, there'd be just the timeline would be an absolute ruin. But that clip that came out a whole 24 hours prior, by the way, of the Arsenal players signing that young girl's kit became a really big talking point online for some reason today. And a lot of people, Roy Jennings, Andy Goldstein, a lot of people were putting out these really long quote tweets about how the Arsenal players were rude and arrogant and spoiled. And like, it was just like a lot. So here's one of them. This is the clip. This is Andy Goldstein saying, not one player interacts with her and her dad can come in. Her and her dad can come into TalkSport anytime she wants to hang out with us. There was plenty of these. Let's see if I can find the other ones. This is from Al Ferran saying, horrible clip, serious lack of common sense from the admin to post this and not think it would backfire. You can tell in the clip that this is probably her first ever time meeting people of notable fame. She's not shocked at the lack of interactions from the prima donnas and probably thinks it's the norm for them to not even acknowledge her presence right in front of her. Dickheads. I'll keep going. Nick Knowles, I suggest Arsenal, you go get her and her family back and give your players another go at being decent human beings. Admittedly, they'd have to be coached into it, but it might be something that sticks with them if it's pointed out. There's tons of these. I mean, this clip alone had like it has 9 million views on it. An innocuous, this clip was from 2 days ago, and it was of the Arsenal team, signing this young girl's kit. And I just couldn't for the life of me. Here's him again. Why doesn't a single one of them actually say hello or even acknowledge the mascot? Are they all so self-obsessed that not a single one of them say hello or even look at her? I mean, they are going like in. Do you hear what I'm saying? And so this has been like the talk of like all of today, which has been absolutely ridiculous from my perspective. I cannot understand for the life of me how nobody has common sense to think maybe she met them before they actually started signing her kit. We know the mascots do more than just meet them one time and they sign the kit. She probably already met them. That's not the first time that she did. And, they are in game mode. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they're trying to get into the zone because they're just about to go into the dressing room prior to the match. Girl is smiling. You can tell she's having a good time, but they had to make an innocuous little clip into, some of the things that they were saying, it was like, oh my gosh, this is catastrophic. Clowns, absolute clowns. And the best thing that could have happened was on, I think it was Nick Knowles' tweet that I read out, that her own father came out and tweeted him back and said, my daughter had a lovely time as mascot for Arsenal. There was only a small window to meet the players and she enjoyed it very much. Odegaard is her favorite player, so to hold his hand on the pitch was very special. So her father had to come out and and say, basically, we had a good time. Can you not try to drag us into your point scoring, virtue signaling BS? She had the time of her life. And they were saying that she didn't. She was treated poorly. She was treated rudely. The players were arrogant. They were self-absorbed. They weren't, nice people. I saw people saying that our players were despicable, horrible human beings, bottom of the earth, worst thing that they ever seen over a clip. And then what this idiot decides to do is double down. After he's told by her own father that she had a great day, he goes, glad she had a great day. Very odd and obviously misrepresentative clip for the club to put out on social media. You're actually like the worst. This is my problem with like human beings, is that instead of saying I may have gotten it wrong, you double down and try to make it seem like it's Arsenal's fault that you can't use common sense. So what happened was Arsenal didn't misrepresent anything. It's you saw a couple of, attention seekers, virtue signaling accounts put this out there. And because you wanted to look like a good person and call attention to the horrible Arsenal team and this despicable club, you put yourself in that position. You got told by her father that you're basically wrong and you can't handle just saying, I got it wrong. Use common sense. It's a 30-second clip of the players signing kit. That's not the first time that they spoke to the young girl. Like, you didn't care about the young girl. Like, if I gotta be honest, I don't think a single person that tweeted about this gave a flip about that younger girl. Like, they didn't. It was just about, this is something that can get me clicks and attention. I hate Arsenal. Their players are awful. I can't stand them. And this is my time to virtue signal and point score. It's ridiculous. Like, this was the level on TalkSport, on everything, just people talking about. They even got Laura Woods, and I love Laura Woods, and she probably didn't see the rest of this, but even she was going in on the players about this. And I'm just like, I have a hard time believing that our players are these scumbags that everybody was trying to make them out to seem. It was an absolute joke. And quite frankly, ahead of a game, I expect our team to be focused. They were nice, they were polite, but no, they weren't taking pictures and stuff like that, like they probably would be doing way ahead of the game or after. It's moments before they walked out. It's a joke. Like, it literally is. And to double down on it, this guy, like, seriously, you're like, I know you're like well into your 40s, maybe in your 50s. Like, get a fucking grip, Like, I suggest Arsenal get her and her family back and give your players another go at being decent human beings. And let me also say this. Even if the players just signed the kit and that's the only interaction that she got, that does not make those Arsenal players terrible human beings. What would make them terrible human beings is if they didn't sign the kit, they refused to, or, maybe they kicked a kid, maybe they, punched somebody in the face. That's a terrible human being. The level to which they went to was just like the antithesis of 2023 social media, where everything is completely blown out of proportion and there's no sense of like reality. Even if that's all that they did, those are not despicable human beings. Get a fucking grip, please. C. Wilder says everyone should delete Twitter. I kind of agree. Ultima Spell says rival fan policing Arsenal again. I mean, it was media outlets. I use that very loosely. Media outlets just freaking everybody and their mom. Sorry. Making the biggest deal out of absolutely nothing, only to be shut down by the girl's father. And now they're all quiet. And my biggest thing is I actually think that they should turn around and apologize for the things that they said, because saying that somebody is, not a good human being, speaking about some of these men have children, and I don't think that they're despicable human beings. Like, they know they didn't kick her, they didn't call her a name. That's despicable. But yeah, signing the autograph without looking her deeply in the eyes is despicable. Like, be fucking for real. Sally says they were reaching for real. They really were. I mean, whose is the worst? Like, this is the one that made me chuckle. Actually, I'm not even gonna pull it up because I don't have time. But the one that made me chuckle like the most, and then after I read this, obviously we can get off of this, but the one that made me die the most is Rory Jennings. That little girl looking up in awe at her heroes, and not one of them had the courtesy to acknowledge her in any way whatsoever. This is a disgusting clip, a sad incident of how football is gone. Be fucking for real. Come on, okay? It's crazy. Dubin says, agreed people should focus on Partey. It says still out on bail for whatever. So here's the thing about that as well. Like, point scoring still for me is like not the cutest thing. And I don't actually think people should be focusing on Partey. I think they should allow their the law to do their job, you know, because as we've seen with multiple people in recent times, like sometimes you just don't have the full story. And just because somebody accuses you of something and you think you know doesn't actually mean that that's actually true. And so there are a lot of people who, like with this clip, also are virtue signaling over the Thomas Partey stuff. Yeah, it's there. And Arsenal would suspend him if he was charged of something. We all know that, like, but he hasn't been. And quite frankly, Arsenal would be in a lot of trouble if they suspended him off of an allegation and it were not to come true. Can't do that. And so even I feel like, you know, there's probably a possibility that maybe something has happened, you know, but we don't know. And if you guys remember the Gylfi Sigurdsson situation, he was somebody that had a lot of, you know, allegations against him a couple of years ago, and he lost everything. Like, he's never going to play in the Premier League again. He's probably never going to play football again. And he ended up not being charged for any of those things that, you know, he allegedly did. And so, you know, I think, and everybody had said that he was a pedo, you know, he was messing around with young girls, he was doing this. Now, that doesn't mean that he was 100% didn't do it. But if you don't know 100% that he did, I do think you have to be careful. And like the idea that Arsenal should suspend somebody without having any sort of law, you know, any sort of like governing body tell them that this is what's going on, I do think it's a little bit far-fetched and even a little bit immature to think that Arsenal, a big global company, would do that just because you want a virtue signal, you know, and you want Arsenal to be the club that steps outside. Greenwood is not, he wasn't charged for anything that he did. Gylfi Sigurdsson's been let off. Like, you have to wait for things to like actually come out. But, you know, if he were to be charged for something, of course, I don't ever want to see him at Arsenal Football Club again. You know, but all these people saying, well, what about Partey? What about Partey? What about Partey? You have to actually let the law do their job, you know? And here's another way to think of it. Is that obviously you have no connection to Thomas Partey. Nobody, you know, he's not our family. He's not anybody that we know personally. But if Thomas Partey was your son and he was accused of something, but he was not charged and he has not gone to trial yet, would you want him to lose everything before he was given a fair trial? No, you wouldn't. You would want him to get the fair trial that everybody deserves, correct? So, you know it doesn't look good for him. And personally, in my heart, I don't think it will go good for him. But the fact that people are trying to make it seem like Arsenal are doing something wrong, I do think have to think about it from a broader perspective than just Arsenal should be classable and just suspend him without getting any governing body to tell them that he's guilty of something. You know, so it's such a tough one. It really is. And it doesn't feel good. Like, I don't say this to say like, oh, I think he's right, you know, or I think he's probably not innocent. Like, I'm not saying that to, you know, say that. I'm just saying that it's naive to think that Arsenal should suspend somebody without a governing body telling them that this person is guilty of something or being charged of something because he's on trial by Twitter, because people have seen some Snapchat messages. Would you want your son to go to jail for something and lose everything off of the back of some Snapchat messages? Or your brother, or anything, like, come on. So it's just, trial by Twitter is not, for me, the way to do anything. And I think Arsenal are in a poor position right now because, they may have somebody that's playing for them that may have done something, but to just suspend him because fans want to virtue signal, just for me doesn't feel right. Sin says, either way, for one of your best players in the title race, it's a terrible situation. It really is. Like, it's not nice. It's not a good feeling. But Arsenal is not your local, hardware store. It's not somewhere where somebody has an allegation against them and you suspend them immediately. It can't happen like that, and he's not even being named, even though we know it's him, because they don't have enough against him. He's not being charged so that they can actually put it out there. That's why Arsenal can't say anything. Everybody's on a gag order. Like, I don't know how people don't see that this is much bigger than like your local situation, like at like a restaurant. Like, it's just not, yeah. So I don't think this, if I had to say like what I think is going to happen, I don't think it's going to turn out well. But I also cannot blame Arsenal for what's going on, so hard. Like, it's a difficult and really shitty situation. Amira says this whole Partey thing isn't easy for the club unless he's officially charged. The club can't suspend him without a valid reason because he can take action against the club. That's the best way you can possibly take it, or to put it out there. And that's pretty much the only reason why I feel like nothing has really happened. It's not because Arsenal don't have any class and they don't have the, like, again, it's so much bigger than just like at a local place that of where somebody was suspended right away. And it's not exactly like Greenwood because of the magnitude of the, we know that that's him on that tape. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's way different. Where when you're looking at like a Snapchat message, that could have been manipulated by anybody. So it's not really evidence, is it? It's hard. Like, it sucks. It really does. Newman says, thanks for addressing Jess. The silence has been deafening. I think that's why it's like, and it's hard to have like those, it's hard to have the conversations because like, obviously, like, you can't really say anything. And then if you say that you don't want to talk about it, people say that you're advocating it, when it's such a nuanced conversation that you can't make it that black and white. But it doesn't look good. It really doesn't. HM said, did you read those messages though? Also, with 3 different women accusing, you can't be a coincidence. But at the same time, Mendy was accused by 8 people, and the charges were lifted against him on like 6 of those. Gylfi Sigurdsson was alleged more than just one girl, and he's been let off of all of those charges. So regardless, like, of if it's 1, 3, whatever, and then I know that there's like, oh well, the statistics around like being able to actually go to jail off of the back of, an SA allegation, type of thing. It's very difficult. So just believe that these people have went through it. You have to take the charges and you have to take the allegations very, very seriously. And they have to go through all the different, parts of the investigation. Like, it shouldn't be just like shoved to the side as anybody is just like making things up or whatever. But I don't think that means that if somebody alleges that you do something, that you should just go straight to jail. Like, I really don't believe in that. So regardless if it's 1 girl, 2 girls, 3 girls, 4 girls, like, let the law do their job and stop doing trial by Twitter. It's just like today, where not exactly the same, but tons of people decided off of a clip that those Arsenal players had done something bad to that young girl and were rude. And then when the information finally came out, they realized that they didn't have the full story. And regardless how I feel how this is going to shake out, we don't have the entire story. So I'm very uncomfortable with making very big, statements about how the club should deal with something without information. I'm not there and I don't know, you know. Um so yeah. But if he did it, he's dead to me, of course. Like, it's just an awful situation to be in. But anyways, I digress. Everybody's a clown who said that the Arsenal players were despicable people because they didn't. They did something poor to that little girl. They didn't do anything. You're just a loser. You need to get over it and grow up. Um, There's 150 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. The next thing I wanted to talk about is Declan Rice. The latest news on the street about Declan Rice is that Arsenal are best placed to sign him, and it'll cost about £100 million to get him. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of peas. Almost did something that I was like, I would regret, but I won't do it. No, I'll do it anyway. We're the peas fam. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. But Declan Rice is going to cost a lot of money to come to the Emirates. And I think that's leaving people feeling like, well, Arsenal actually pulled the trigger on something like that. Because, I mean, that's a lot of money for a player, right? But, I think Arsenal should do it. If that's their number one target, bring in Declan Rice. He was the best midfielder on the pitch when we played against them. And I had this, debate with somebody around personality, and what this Arsenal team is missing out on, or what this Arsenal team is missing. And I think we have some really talented players. I think we have some players that are growing into the players that they will eventually become. We've seen huge strides from the likes of Odegaard and Saka and Gabriel Martinelli. I think those players are really showing that they have that star quality. We've seen a lot from Gabriel and Saliba as well, and Ben White. But I think in the middle of the pitch, we lack personality. We lack the personalities that are going to drag you over the line. We lack the winning mentality in midfield that you need. There's players that are talented, but the talent needs to be even in the most pressurized situations. And I don't expect Odegaard and Martinelli and Saka to have those clutch genes just yet because they're young and they'll grow into that. But we have players in our midfield that are showing us pretty much as good as they're going to be, as clutch as they're going to be. And I do feel like sometimes when we go to those big away grounds, when we're under pressure, when we need somebody to drag us over the line, we don't see the amount of personality that is required to play for Arsenal. We don't have that, And when you look at a player like Rodri, you can see that like he has that. Now, of course, he has world-class talent around him, but I don't think there's ever a moment where you look at him and you say that he's not showing up for the big game. He drags the team over the line. He gets the first goal, in their Champions League match. Like, he just has the personality about him. And I think we lack that in midfield, So is Declan Rice that player? I think based on, just he's playing in a really shitty team, but I saw much more personality from him than I saw from some of the players playing in our midfield. And I just have this feeling that he's going to be the type of guy to grab the game by the scruff of the neck, score a goal when you least expect it. He's not going to be sitting around waiting on somebody else to do it for him. And he's not just going to put in 9s and 10s against the Minnows at home. He's going to put in 9s and 10s against Liverpool away, Manchester United away. Those are the types of games that we needed. And so I think we lack personality, not necessarily quality, some quality, but personality. And I think that's what he could bring. I'm not sure about Caicedo. I think he's building that, but I know I've seen it from Declan Rice. Is it worth $100 million? It's a lot of money, but we lack that. I'm telling you, we need players that are going to say, I'm going to do it, Leo says Caicedo actually very much wants to come to Arsenal, so I would take him over Rice. Leo says Rice is overrated. Why do you say that? Why is Rice overrated? what makes him overrated, because I've questioned a lot of people around this, and I really do feel like it comes down to Declan Rice's English. Everybody thinks English players, or British players are overhyped by nature. And he's not the cool choice because he's not coming from Brighton. Caicedo's been named the next N'Golo Kante. He's from Brighton. Everything that Brighton touches turns to gold. And so there's less of a hype train around Declan Rice, I think, than Caicedo at the moment. But some people say that Rice is being hyped up. But I feel like the opposite. As soon as he was linked to Arsenal, he all of a sudden became not good enough. He's not he doesn't score enough goals. He doesn't do this and that. Since when does a DM need to score a bunch of goals? Like, it makes sense, So I think, I'm finding it hard to see where Caicedo is so much better than Declan Rice, where people are like, Rice is not good and Rice is, and Caicedo is just so much better. I think what I see from Rice that I don't necessarily see from Caicedo is the general and midfield type of personality, somebody that will put on a captain's armband or be like a captain in that midfield. And Caicedo, I see a good player, but I'm not sure I see those things. And I think Arsenal need the soft factors as well as the talent. Yo-Yo says, business end of the season requires Arteta's lieutenants to pull rank. The Sheikh AFC says, Rice is also at the age where he can also still improve. Buy him now, as he is consistent and will be a good addition. Says Rodri can get gritty when he has to. We're still soft. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I just feel like we lack a look of that. And there's players in our team that will eventually get that what do you want to call it? That grit, that fire, that they'll get that clutch gene. We've seen some of it from Martinelli and Saka so far this season. Odegaard still needs to work on it, but we have two midfielders that are pushing 30, and this is as good as they're going to get. And we've seen time and time again, either, like if you think about Thomas Partey, he's either, available during the run-in, or he's either not available during the run-in, or he goes missing in games, or makes huge mistakes. Xhaka sometimes just goes completely missing in games where it's really physical and, the game is really taxing. You're not really going to count on him to pull the team over the line, are you? And so we're beyond the, just passing well against Manchester City for a half, and that's okay. We need players that are going to get us the result. And I think we missed that. And midfield is the most important place. If you don't have personality in midfield, you're effed. So Ollie A says, plus, Jess, it will be harder to get Caicedo because I don't think Brighton will be selling McAllister and Caicedo in the same window. And McAllister's dad, who is the agent, has already said it will leave. And yeah, I'm not sure that, I agree with exactly what Ollie is saying, is that Caicedo may not be, on the transfer list this summer. And from a Brighton perspective, if they make it into Europe, they will want to keep some of their better players. They're not going to sell everybody. And so, yeah, if McAllister is leaving, you don't sell Caicedo. And so I see Declan Rice as being the natural choice, not just from a playing perspective and a talent perspective, but personality and availability as well. Austin says they don't count on how his tenaciousness he can be in our system because we haven't seen it. If you didn't see it on Sunday, then I don't know what else you need to see. He single-handedly got them back in that game. He pickpocketed our midfield several different times. He absolutely bodied them and made them look like kids. I thought Thomas Partey looked so weak up against Declan Rice. And once Rice knew that he had the beating of him and was in his head, that was it. And they pushed from there. And that was a team that was down 2-0 against the best team in the league. So it may not count for much because he doesn't play for a team that's in Champions League or anything like that. But I see personality from him that I think we lack in our midfield for sure. Leo says that was due to complacency, not due to skill. Not necessarily. I don't think that. No, it wasn't skill that he needed in order to take the ball off of Thomas Partey, but he did sense a vulnerability on our midfield. It wasn't by luck that he pressed him and nicked the ball off of him in that situation. He saw and they saw that we were complacent and they took advantage of it. And so I know that people want to act like Rice didn't do anything special in that game, but if you watch and you watch back the clips and the comps, he was absolutely the best midfielder on the pitch, So And I don't know if people realize, like, sometimes when we play, people say that we just got lucky because the other team made mistakes or the other team, wasn't as good as they should have been on the day. It's one thing, first of all, you make your own luck. So teams don't just give you goals. You put them under pressure, you stress them out, and then they make the mistakes, whatever, whatever. And then you also have to capitalize on it. So I'm not sure if I can just, it's just because Thomas Partey was sitting there and he got complacent that Rice did that. Rice also had to be in the situation. He also had to be aware. He also had to take advantage of it. And he did. And it's not just based on this game. It's almost every game I see Rice, play. And I wasn't 100% sold on him in the beginning, but the more I watch him, the more I understand why Mikel Arteta would probably really want him. We like to buy captains. We like players from within the league. He can get better. He has the ball progression that we just don't have. He has the long range passing that is good, at the base of your midfield, and he can grow into that role. Vagabond says, hi, Jess, Liverpool fans here. Arsenal don't have interest in Zaha. People are teasing you. I can tell you Arsenal are interested in Callum Hudson-Odoi, and the Rice interest is there. Thanks, but I don't know if Callum Hudson-Odoi is any better than Wilfried Zaha, but thanks. John P says, Rice gives me Rodri vibes. I know that he's not the fancy choice, but I feel like that's why he's right, because most of the players that we've had have brought in have not been the fancy choice, and they've ended up being the right choice. So I'm not sure I want to go with the hipster choice of Caicedo just because he's at Brighton, and of course he's super talented. But when I see people say he is clear of Rice, he's so much better than Rice, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing clear. I'm seeing both really talented, could both be useful in our system, but it's for Arsenal, it's not just about what you do on the ball, it's your personality, it's the soft factors. Those things matter. And I also think we have really improved, not just because, we have brought in talented players, but I think we brought in players with the right mentalities and the right personalities. We need more of that. Maxino says Rice's physical profile alone makes him better, but I want both. I can't lie. It would be nice to be able to get both. I just don't think we will be able to. HM says Rodri's first touch and close control is on another galaxy to Basmati Rice. Yeah, probably. I would expect Rodri, it's not to be reductive or anything, but we all know how Spanish players, how they train, how they're taught, So I would expect Rodri, technically to be a better player than Rice, but I don't think we're looking for just technical ability. I think tempo control, ball winning, interceptions, knowing where to be at the right time, going into the back line to create a 5, being able to be a general in midfield basically by yourself without anybody having to hold your hand. I think that's important. And so, yeah, technically, of course, Rodri is superior to Rice. Let's be for real. But I don't know if it's just about that. And I'm not sure that Caicedo is technically anywhere near Rodri either, So Boy says, so when Liverpool and City or Man United sign SMS and he reinvents midfield, I hope no one is saying we should have bought him over Rice. No, I don't think anybody thinks that, Milinkovic-Savic is coming to the Premier League. If he does, then, I would be very, very shocked. But, I don't even think that Rice and Milinkovic-Savic play the same position and would operate, he's more of like what, an 8, and Declan Rice is more of a 6 that could probably operate in the 8 position. So I just think they're so different. But hey, Magzino says, Jess, remember the first season Rodri was so ass when adjusting to the possession-based team. Rice has the tools and doesn't miss games. It's a no-brainer in my opinion. Rodri wasn't amazing, but I also feel like that's what kind of makes me think also that Thomas Partey is going to be phased out. Like if Rice is not being brought in to play the 8 position, comes in to play the 6 position, he will be kind of like eased into that role, and that role will change. Like, I think that role is just going to change anyway. I'm not sure. I think Thomas Partey is a player that we brought in, and has become really good in that position, but I'm not sure that he's the will be the best type of 6 for us long term based on the way that we're going. But I would still take Caicedo, you guys. I'm not saying Caicedo's shit or anything like that. I just have this weird feeling about the soft factors around Rice are also what's really important, and having personality and being able to drag your team over the line, and, you know, having a little bit of that grit, about you, will go a long way. Yo-Yo says, I think some ways Rice would be a Xhaka successor in the team, in the same that Arteta clearly wants himself on the pitch and in some shape or form. I hear that. Diallo says, Jess, I don't think serious people are saying Caicedo is clear and so much better than Rice. The gap ain't that big, but we believe Caicedo is marginally better. Well, I think that there's some people that feel like they're quite similar. Some people feel like it's a small margin, but I've also seen people go way too far and say that they don't think, Rice is that good and he's so overrated and it's Caicedo or die type of thing. But I hear you. And I get that, like, we all have differences of opinion. And if you think Caicedo is marginally better, that's fine. But I guess my questions around Caicedo, like people that think Caicedo is better, is it just from a playing perspective? And do you even care about, soft factors like, leading a team, being a captain, having personality? Because our midfield lacks those things. And we already have Thomas Partey, who is he's a quality player, but he lacks personality, so do you care about those things? Chris says, Jess, would you take Rice or Bellingham? We're not even in the conversation for Bellingham, so it's Rice for me. I don't like spending time on players that we know we're not in for, we won't get. I don't even think if we won the league, he'd be interested in coming to Arsenal. I think he's dead set on Liverpool or stay at Dortmund. So, and if he doesn't go to Liverpool, he'll go to Man City. But Rice would be the choice for me because it feels like somebody who's actually interested in coming to our club, and that's important to me. Yo-Yo says Rice as a DM makes way more sense to me than a CM. Yeah, it does, but then, that, do we feel comfortable with our 8 options as well? If we don't improve the 8 position, I feel uncomfortable going into next season with Xhaka still being a starter. I think he needs to be moved down the pecking order. And then it's the question of whether or not Vieira can, grow into second season and become a starter. I think a lot of us maybe feel like we need to bring in another one, but, I don't know. I really don't. But Xhaka cannot be starting next season, I don't think. I think we need to move beyond that. Dale says, allowed a forward, midfielder, defender, budget within reason, let's say 200 million. Who do you get? Rice. Rice. A forward. I would go knock on Barcelona's door and see if we could take Rafinha. I still think he's the perfect one for us. I think he made a mistake going to Barcelona, to be honest. And knock on Barcelona's door and say, hey, can we take Rafinha off your hands? Rice. And for a defender, I think Rule Walters is going to come in and play like a right-sided center back, right back role in the team. So then I think maybe a left back Ake type of, profile would be nice on the other side, because Tomiyasu is not really always, reliable. So maybe Hincapié or whatever his name is from Bayer Leverkusen, he looks pretty decent to play that kind of left back, left center back role. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. But who am I? All right. Fabrizio says, Jess, would you take Zaha if it meant we get Rice and Caicedo? Yes. That's always been my thing. If I knew that we would get Caicedo and Rice, I'd be okay with not even bringing in like a right wing. So if that meant we got Zaha, then that's what it meant. But I still think we need 2 midfielders. So if that means bringing in a free right wing, then that's what it means. Diallo says, Jess, have you seen Rice's hips? They ain't that flexible. We need a technically astute player in that TP5 role. I mean, as it stands now, but I'm not sure if I think that what the most important thing that we need is technical, a technical player in that position. My mind has really changed about it because I think what we need is tempo control and ball winning. I think that's what we need. I think we need somebody that can cover fullbacks, somebody that can drop into the back line, somebody that can manage midfield by himself without somebody that can handle 2 8/10s in front of them, manage the midfield by themselves, can cover ground, has a little bit of bite behind them. And so I'm not sure that I feel like Thomas Partey's main job in our midfield now is more defending the space and managing the space, and Zinchenko manages the ball. And so where we relied very heavily in buildup on Thomas Partey's abilities on the ball last season, we no longer require that because Saliba does a lot of the building from the back. Zinchenko does a lot of building from the back. And Thomas Partey's role has become more shuttling and covering and winning the ball back and stuff like that. And I think Rice is not only a better ball winner than him, but he covers ground better than Thomas Partey. And so I'm not sure that what we need is, loose hips, and Thomas Partey doesn't control the tempo as good as he probably should. And I think that's a big part of it. Chris says, do you think Patino plays next season or goes back on loan? I think he goes back on loan. Bailey says we can get a coup over Chelsea on Rice, and Defo want Rafinha. Ben Dover says, can't believe he said that. I think I know what he meant, though, I think he meant like they're kind of stiff. I don't know. Craig says, Zaha on a free backup. Yes, Saka needs rotation, etc. Seawalder says he still has other powers, though. It's a difficult one, but, kind of based on our more recent conversation, like a couple of minutes ago, around my gut feeling around what might happen this summer with Thomas Partey and the fact that we're so heavily linked with DMs. I think he's going to be phased out one way or another, to be honest. Arteta's also said, we need players that can play every 4 days. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but Rodri is available every game for Manchester City. He has a really good injury record, and that's just something that Thomas Partey doesn't have. But Declan Rice is fit every single game, and so that's what you need. We're going to need our starting DM to be able to play in the Premier League and also play, in Champions League. So to me, that don't sound like Thomas Partey. That sounds like he's being phased out. It is what it is. Dell says he will be good to have, but he won't be a first-team player, so can impact the game. Wonder who you're talking about there, if you're talking about Zaha. Cool Dude says, hey, anyone in the chat like Basmati? I don't think very many people do, but I kind of get it. You say you prefer Jasmine rice. As far as rice goes, I like all types of rice. I'm a huge rice fan, to be honest. I love rice. I like probably basmati rice the best. But I'm not so, stringent on what kind of rice, because I just like it all, So yeah, jasmine rice is okay, but I think basmati is better. Crispy says basmati rice. Maxwell says Olise over Zaha. There's actually a report today that said that we're going to be snubbed by Olise because he wants to stay at Crystal Palace. Cool. That's fine with me. Mamang says, Jess, do you still choose McAllister over Rice? For the 8 position, yeah, I would still prefer a natural attacking player in that position. So, if it was my choice and I was like, okay, Rice is going to come in, I'd rather him come in and replace Thomas Partey and then bring in a natural 8 to, Odegaard, McAllister, Vieira, McAllister, Odegaard, Vieira, that 3 group plus Xhaka, I guess, can play those 8 positions, So yeah, in the 8 position, I would prefer McAllister for sure. Chris says duck fried rice is dope. Shrimp fried rice for me. Chris says, honestly, we need some serious upgrades and added depth in certain positions this summer. UCL next season want to actually compete in all competitions next year. These boys are going to have some growing up to do. I feel like maybe we did it for a certain reason so we could make sure that Champions League has been secured. You know, I was talking about this to some rivals the other day, but I really emphasize the importance of Arsenal making sure that they secured Champions League this season. And we pretty much, with one more win, we will have secured Champions League with like 6 games to go. And I do think that, you know, not that I'm a big, you know, I don't like going out of competitions on purpose in order to do blase, 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 blah. But I do think if Arteta had managed things differently, let's say he did more of what Ten Hag did and played stronger teams across all competitions to go really far in them, I think it would have been a risk for this team to be in a top 4 scrap and also be looking at Europa League quarterfinal, looking at, you know, an FA Cup semifinal, you know, things like that. And so I do think securing Champions League, because there's always a cost. You know, I think the idea that we should have just been able to win the Premier League, you know, actually challenge for the league with this team and also be in every single competition is far fetched. And so, you know, there's always a trade off. Would I have preferred to win it? I want to win a trophy every single year, but to have Champions League secure, you know, before it gets to squeaky bum time is important for this team. And but because they haven't been playing multiple games a week, you know, Saka's been largely rested, Martinelli's been rested some, you know, Partey doesn't play, you know, Europa League games. You know, Ben White was kind of rotated. When you've done that, I feel like they've been babied a little bit as well. And I think it's going to be a rude awakening for the team to have to play, like our best players to have to play every 4 days. You know, they're going to have to perform much quicker, like more, you know, often. And so it's going to be a huge, I think, wake up call, not just for the team, but for the fans. And so we do need more depth, more quality, because this team is going to be expected to get out of the group of the Champions League. I've seen some wild shit about we should be getting to the final. Take a chill pill. I don't care how challenging for the league don't have nothing to do with cup competitions. It's nothing similar whatsoever. It requires a totally different skill set, which is why Man City, who have probably been the best team in Europe for years now, have really struggled to win the Champions League. So the idea that a team that with a rotated squad couldn't beat Sporting, a team that was dumped out of the Champions League, all of a sudden is going to be getting to the final. Take a chill pill, smoke some weed. It's not happening. Getting out of the group would be probably really good in my eyes, because we're also going to need to be challenging for the league again, you know, and we also need to make sure, you know, we need to make sure we qualify for Champions League again. And so next year is going to be a wake up call. It's going to be a wake up call. It is, because then you're going to have strong teams like Chelsea and Liverpool that may not even have Europe, and all they're going to be focused on is on the league. That's it. You know, so you have stronger teams that are going to be able to focus on the league. You're going to have the likes of Aston Villa and Newcastle really souping up their teams to go again. You know, and Arsenal are going to be first year ever for a lot of these players in the Champions League, having to also challenge for the league again. It's going to be hard, you know, so I think people need to temper their expectations. Dale says we need more depth and quality to win the league. The bonus is it gives us better chance at the cups. The thing I'll say about, you know, I kind of said this yesterday, is that, you know, this team, this wasn't my original thought, but I saw it online, and then I told you guys that I thought it was a good point that this team was created and assembled to get into the Champions League, to qualify for Champions League, and they've overachieved and gotten themselves into a title race. And so instead of focusing on other cups, we decided to focus on the biggest one on offer. And whether you like it or not, that's what we chose to do. we could end up with nothing, you know. But next season there just shouldn't be a scenario where Rob Holding is playing important games for Arsenal in the run-in. We really need to make sure that we don't bring any more kids into this team. There's already enough of those. We need more experience. We need more athleticism. We need more grit. We need a lot of things. And so Arsenal have got to get this transfer window right, because I think we're in a really good situation where other teams have fallen behind, where we have kind of gotten stronger, and now we have Champions League to kind of dangle in front of players' faces and say, we're the next team up, so come join us. We may not have that opportunity next season, so we have to get it right. Look at Liverpool. They decided not to, address midfield, and they may not be able to get their number one target that they were saving their coins for, because they're not going to even have Champions League. So we can't be like that. Diallo says, yep, I agree. Make the quarterfinals and take it from there. We ain't there yet. Magzino says, we will be fine, in my opinion, just by depth. We are going to be competing again in the league. I don't know how far we'll go in the CL. I've seen some crazy shit. We should be, look at Chelsea. They're able to get through here, so we should be able to get through here. Chelsea have a bunch of players in their team that have not only won the Champions League, but have played in that competition more times. That we have probably 4 players in our team that have played consistently in the Champions League, maybe. So cup competitions are nothing like the league. And so the idea that we're just going to run away with that competition because we're good in our league, I think is really lacks any sort of I don't want to be harsh, but I do think it's a little bit unrealistic. Zich says, I think we should be able to get past the round of 16 in the Champions League. Ivy says, Jess, how excited are you that we won't hear the Europa League song again? I am so happy. I don't even know how. I just want to see us in the Champions League again. I just want to feel the Tuesdays and Wednesdays and not be on the Thursdays. I want to see how this team, performs, and stuff like that. But I'm also scared because I know that, that competition is going to take a toll on the Premier League. And I just hope they have enough to do both. But I'm excited not to hear that raggedy ass anthem anymore. Okay. It's a banger, but I want the champions. I want that. Okay. Not Europa nights. I don't want that. I'm beyond that now. Too good. Amira says, Edu and Co. have to get the balance right. We'll realistically only use 15-ish players rotated in 4 competitions. Rest will be experienced players who you'll have to keep happy or young potential. That's interesting, because I think that, experienced players that are kind of okay with being on the bench versus young talented players that have potential, so hard to get it right, because that's the difference between Rule Walters and fucking Holding, and it's almost like a lose-lose in a way, so it is hard, but you have to make sure that your players, maintain their fitness, so anybody that has a poor fitness record, I do think you need to look at them again and say, is this a player that we can rely upon in a difficult scenario? And yeah, but I still just think, I guess if I lean on either side, I would say that if I had to look at my bench and see what do I want, a Holding or a Walters, I would always maybe prefer a Walters, type of thing, because I'm not sure that Holding's experience necessarily helps us, because he doesn't play in the system. I'd rather have a young player that's more like the other players that start in terms of their qualities and attributes than an older experienced player that doesn't even fit the system. What kind of experience is it if it doesn't actually help us? And then Holding's experience for me is not Champions League experience. It's not winning the league experience. He's not just some old guy that we're phasing out that was a part of a winning team. It's different, Hold on. Okay. Hold on. Got it? All right. You know what I mean? So it's different. It's definitely different. Sin says it's going to be great. Leo says no point in being the Champions League if you cannot compete. I hope that this club sees that. No, I get that, but I think you have to be in it first, and be in it consistently before you can expect to win it. And I think that's even with the title race. I think sometimes you lose it a couple of times before you actually win it because you need the experience in it first. And this team lacks experience. It really does. When you think about what they've been able to do with that lack of experience, you have to look at them and say, wow, like they're doing a good job, you know? Tony says, convinced me on injured players. You totally called it on Renato Sanchez injury record, barely plays and is still always injured. Obviously availability is a skill. You want good available players. I think Renato Sanchez falls into overhyped for somebody that's so injury prone, you know? And so, and if you can't rely upon them, there's just no point in having them. You know, I feel the same way about players that are good, but don't actually fit your system. What kind of depth is it if it's not available? And what kind of depth is it if it doesn't fit the system? And so I think still Arsenal need to look at some of the options that they have behind, you know, their number one people, because some of them are so injury prone that it's almost like not having the depth. So yeah, it's hard. Chris says, no joke though, that Walters kid has bags of potential. Hope we develop him properly. I think he'll do good next season. Don't expect to see him this season, but I think he's going to be fine. Saksham says, we cannot compete decently with ESR, Vieira, and Nelson holding the level of players. I know. Saksham, are you still distressed over the West Ham game? Because I know you were feeling some type of way. We all were, but yeah, it's funny. But yeah, I think you guys know I'm gonna stick by Vieira. I'm gonna stick by him. I'm gonna stick by him. I'm gonna stick by him. I'm not gonna leave him. So I'm gonna stick by Vieira. But Holding, ESR, you know, Holding in particular, ESR, how far he's fallen down the pecking order makes me really worried for him. You know, Tony says, have you tried Nando's? Is it as good as the hype? I don't eat meat, you know, so I'm a pescatarian, so I wouldn't know anything about Nando's, to be honest. I can kind of remember like what fried chicken tastes like, but I've been pescatarian for like 9 years, you know. So yeah. Drew says Holding is way better than Vieira. Cool. C. Walter says just read section messages in a baby voice from now on. Diallo says, I'm worried about ESR. I hear you. Kafuso says Saliba's ability on the ball, his pace, his presence is not to be underestimated on its impact on the play of the whole team. It's not about mistakes. We kind of talked about that yesterday. People are saying, you know, Holding is playing fine. I think Holding could play the best game of his life and make little to no individual errors, and we would still see his effect on the rest of the team. And so, you know, as much as I get that he's a good guy and it's not his fault that he's not as good as Saliba and we shouldn't expect him to be, but if you're really sitting here and acting like there hasn't been a drop off and some of our players haven't, you know, suffered around him trying to keep him from making these mistakes, then I don't know what game you're watching. You know, he doesn't have to drag somebody down and get a red card to have a negative effect on the group, you know. So Holding is just somebody that I feel like shouldn't be playing in the run-in next season, you know, because you get the injuries in the worst possible time. And so you have to think, okay, in the worst possible scenario, who could potentially be playing? And next season, it can't be him. Nice guy. Yo-Yo says, I'm not much of a fan of Vieira, but I don't get why the fan base expects so much from him in his first season. He wasn't a regular starter at his last club. I can't even go into it anymore. If you don't think he's going to make it, fair. If he's not your type of player, fair. But like, if you remove all context and just expect him to be Odegaard overnight, I don't know, man. Halimi says, I wanted to ask a question. If we don't win the league, is it considered failure if we threw the other competitions to fry bigger fish, according to our fan base? I mean, you failed to do what you're supposed to do or what you were expecting to do or what you were trying to do. I think the remit of the season definitely changed halfway through, where we decided that, the league is what we're going to go after because we were really well placed to win it. And so I think it's a nuanced conversation because people use their agendas to make these really harsh criticisms of the team, because if they don't win it, it's because we threw everything else and we could have won something else. There was no guarantee we would have won the Carabao Cup. There's no guarantee that we would have won, anything. Looking at it, just because cup competitions for me are more difficult than the league in some scenarios, because you just don't know who you're going to come up against. It's luck based, it's hard. And so I think the idea that, if we hadn't went for the league and went stronger in other competitions, we would have definitely won those. I don't know, but in terms of failure, we will have failed to win the league. So somewhat it would feel like a failure, but it's more disappointment, feeling a little bit like, what if? But if we were a team that had kind of been in and around winning the league or challenging for the league a couple of seasons and we hadn't finished 5th last season, I would be a little bit more, we failed. Like if this was the Invincibles and we didn't win the league, we would have failed for sure, because that team is supposed to be fighting for the league. But this team just happened to be in a really good scenario on their hard work, and they went for the biggest prize because, it's the biggest trophy on offer. We've been in top 4 scraps, gotten to the top 4 and won the FA Cup before, and it felt okay, but we know that we need Arsenal to be a title challenging team. And so, I've been thinking about this a lot lately about, the idea that, if Manchester United finished 4th but won a trophy, did they have a better season? Absolutely, because the whole point of elite sports is to win trophies. The question is who got closer to where they want to be, so they can have the better season. I'm okay with that. That's fine. But are Arsenal closer to where they want to be than Manchester United? I think so, because like I said, we've had many a season where we haven't been anywhere near challenging for the title, but we won an FA Cup and we kind of, deluded ourselves into thinking that that was an okay season. Top 4 scrap, a little FA Cup here, which is great. And that's good. It's better than challenging for titles because blah, blah, blah. Arsenal need to become a consistent Champions League team and a title challenging team. And you can't challenge for titles, like you can't win titles unless you're in the conversation, right? And so I think at the end of the season, if we will have finished 2nd, I think we're a lot closer to where we want to be than if we had been in a top 4 scrap and won a Carabao Cup, because we've done that before. But in regards to like sports and stuff like that, I'm okay with Manchester United feeling like they won a trophy. They won the better season trophy. It's fine, whatever. They had to be like, they had a 6-year trophy drought. Of course, this is a good season for them, right? But we'll be closer to where we want to be. And so it would be failure, in terms of you didn't do what you're supposed to do. You failed at it. But is it this harsh thing where we need to start rethinking everything about the club and, sacking managers and all that kind of stuff? No, because we will have gotten closer to where we want to be. Sometimes when you challenge for a title, you don't win it. It's hard. Let's see. Cool Dude says consistent Champions League team. Henry is my last memory of it. Yeah, I mean, in order to win the Champions League, you're not going to be in it one season and then win it right away unless you're lucky. It just doesn't happen like that. You're not going to challenge for the league for the first time ever and win it. Like sometimes you have to challenge a couple of times. And so the key is to make sure that you can consistently be in those competitions and be in those scenarios in order to win it. And I think Arsenal really need to focus on the league and being able to challenge for that. Because if you're challenging for the league, you also consistently qualify for Champions League, and you don't want to be in a top 4 scrap. So, and then if you have enough luck to be able to go over into those other competitions, win some of those games. And I've never seen a team, really prioritize the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup like that, unless that was all that they had left. And, they were in the semifinals and the finals. Usually people play a rotated squad. It's not like Arsenal are the only team that have done it. We just weren't good enough to go to the next round. So I still think that you always, if you're in a position to win the league, you prioritize that and you put a lot toward it, because that also gives you Champions League qualification, where if you focus on everything else from the beginning and you're like, I want to win a Carabao Cup or FA Cup because I'm afraid I'm not going to win the Premier League, you're in a top 4 scrap. And if you don't make top 4, you'd be mad about that. So it's a difficult one. Arsenal Forever says Craig Barlow is a trophy, and they still in the FA Cup. It's a trophy, and they're still in the FA Cup and the Europa League. Oh, you guys are talking about Manchester United. Leo says City does what? City does what? They don't prioritize any of those Carabao Cups and the FA Cup. They just have a good enough squad where they can rotate in the Carabao Cup early on and win that without doing much. Manchester City, every year they prioritize the league and the Champions League. They've never prioritized the Carabao Cup. Prioritizing it, you start prioritizing it and putting more resources toward it when you're in the semifinal and the final. We all know that, right? So yeah, Sin says Champions League was some of the most depressing times as a fan ever. Yeah, because we never went beyond that. Like I think we did get comfortable in that, like, okay, making sure you get top 4, and then, just being in that competition gives you the money, and then you just kind of recycle. But the next step for Arsenal is to consistently be in Champions League, challenge for the league, keep doing that, make sure that you have the muscle memory to do that, and then you can start looking at the Champions League and how far you can get into that. It doesn't happen overnight. And I have this weird feeling that Arsenal fans have this weird thing where they think, okay, we're going to go from obscurity and not even qualifying for Champions League to all of a sudden being really competitive in it, just because, like, it just doesn't happen like that. Leo says City played more of their first team players against us in the cup competition when they didn't need to. But they had to play a stronger team because they were playing against us. That was such a weird draw. Usually everybody else played against like a League 1, League 2 championship level team or a lower level Premier League club. We drew each other. So of course, Manchester City, to get to the next round, had to play a little bit more of their starters in order to get past us. But if you look back, even when they played Liverpool, I think they had to play Liverpool early on. They had a rotated team, and using City as a barometer when we know that they're playing on a different playing field and that they have resources that we don't, feels a little bit disingenuous to the argument. What City does in terms of how they use their resources sometimes doesn't necessarily apply to us, because we're not going to have 4 world-class center backs. We're just not going to have that. But they had to put more starters out there in order to get by us, because we're much better than the teams that they should have been playing. When we got that draw, that was the most unfortunate draw you could have gotten, because everybody else played against Birmingham and these types of teams in the lower leagues. We had to play against City. Manchester City, for me, does not prioritize the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. They prioritize the league and the Champions League. It may look like they're prioritizing it more because they have better players, but you're lying to yourself if you're saying that they put a lot of emphasis on those 2 competitions. They don't. They don't. They just are so good that maybe it looks like it. Cool Dude says you can beat City and Chelsea. Beating Newcastle and Brighton are the keys. Let's see. Sakshem says Seven Hag was saying that Anthony is Robin level of a winger. Whatever, Leo says, if they played strong team when they played us, why did we play such a weakened team? Because I feel like, Leo, these are like obvious things. Like City and Arsenal are not playing on the same, they're not in the same stratosphere. Their bench has players that we wish we had on our bench, or probably start for us anyway. So they played a strong team. We played a weakened team because we need to be strong for the league. We have to put everything towards the league. I feel like that's so obvious. Like, we are not if we're trying to compare Arsenal to a certain team and how they probably operate is more like Liverpool than Manchester City. You know, like I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why people are trying to make it seem like we're the same as Manchester City when we just a couple of months ago were talking about how they breached 115 rules in order to get where they are. You know, I don't understand how people are trying to make it seem like we're the same when Pep Guardiola has won everything under the sun and has years and years and years of experience. They have a team that's, won four Premier Leagues. I don't understand why we're trying to act and pretend like we're doing the same things and it should just be easy like that because Manchester City are doing it. If there's such a disingenuous conversation for me. Yes, we should do better. And it was disappointing to go out of the cups early, but Manchester City do not prioritize the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup over the Premier League and the Champions League. They play their strongest lineups in those competitions. Of course, against us, they could go a little bit stronger, but we went more weakened because we only have a starting 11 and maybe one or two players that we feel confident enough to come off of the bench and be similar to what we have. It's just different. I don't know why people are pretending. It's just disingenuous. Yo-Yo says Arsenal are over cheating by dominating the league where Pep is being backed by a nation state. Sin says City's bench worth more than our whole team. Cool Dude says you're in the run with City, so better believe it. Arsenal forever. I'm greedy. I want the lot. We're all greedy, but I'm just not going to pretend as though we're doing the same things. I'm not going to pretend as though, anybody really prioritizes the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. Everybody, even like teams below us, when they're playing against those League One and League Two teams, they play rotated squads. It's just until you get into the quarterfinal, semifinal, final, you really start to really put out your strongest lineups. And from Arsenal perspective, it was pretty much suicide. I really feel like people felt like we should have put out our strongest ever lineup against Manchester City to beat them in the FA Cup when we knew we had to play them a couple of days later. We didn't really have that luxury. Thomas Partey came off injured in that match, so, it's a little bit like next season. I think you guys can have more of we should be competing on all fronts, but I still think you're going to see rotated lineups in early rounds of those two competitions because everybody does it. So yeah, it's weird. Lionide says the drop off when City subbed their best players against Leicester was damn significant. Well, I would say that the most significant aspect of that was Rodri coming off. I think substituting Rodri, there's such a huge drop off there. That's why he plays every single game. But they had already won the game. It was game state. We do the same thing. When we substituted, I think Thomas Partey and a couple other players off against, it was either Leeds or Crystal Palace, we lost some of our mojo as well. But the game was already won. So for me, I'm not putting a lot of emphasis on that second half because the game was done. It was won. And if they even thought that they were going to lose that game or draw, they would have kicked it back up a gear. But the one player that Manchester City could not live without is Rodri. If he were for some reason to go down injured, they'd be in a lot of trouble because they don't have anything similar to it. And he does a lot of the heavy lifting in that team. So yeah. Drew says, if City are guilty, then so Man United and Chelsea, they all spend that kind of money. Stop making excuses. Well, Manchester United and Manchester City are nothing alike. Manchester United have grown from the bottom and they do things the right way. Manchester United have been successful off of the back of just being a really, really elite club in England. Chelsea, we always talk about Chelsea, but it's the reason why they had do we forget that they had to get new owners because of how their owner got their money? Do we forget that they breached financial fair play and they had to have a transfer ban? Like Chelsea, we already know about them, but Manchester City are completely different. And so I get that people want to pretend as though we're all playing on the same playing field so that they can be upset that we're not in the same competitions and, we can't always do the same things and all this kind of stuff. But Manchester United, it's not about how much you spend. Manchester United can spend as much as they want because they're the biggest club in England. They're one of the most successful clubs. And so they will always be able to spend the money. Like the amount of money that Manchester United make on their own just from just existing is just something that's like nobody else can really compete with. So they don't need to get nation state to like fund them or anything like that. Manchester United is a money-making entity. They're playing on a whole different playing field than we are, you know? So, and Chelsea is different because they had Roman, he was funneling money through, they were doing shit that they weren't supposed to be doing, didn't matter. And then Manchester City came in, and now they're the team that are kind of like everybody's looking at, trying to figure out how a team, because Chelsea were also a Champions League team before, you know, Roman even came into the picture. They were always fourth, you know, so they actually didn't start from the bottom. Manchester City were like in the championship, and then we're like 15, 16, 17, always relegation threatened. You know, they never really reached the, you know, Champions League before that. So we're talking about so many different things, and we're trying to make them seem like they're equal, and they're not. Arsenal are building. I find anybody that feels like we've done something gravely wrong by going after the Premier League and not going so far in the cups, and like it's just like this big injustice because everybody else does all these things and we should be able to compete on the same level. I just feel like it's really disingenuous. Like I really do. Manchester City, Chelsea, and Man United, they're all different scenarios, but the same, like the underlying thing is that they have reasons why they can spend and have the types of teams that they have that we don't necessarily have. You know, I don't really understand. So it's just weird. Like, I know people are upset because we may not win the league now, and so now we're looking back on all the other competitions that we should have went stronger in. Now it's very hindsight, and if you guys are going to sit here and act like City and Manchester United are the same as us, come on now. Let's see. Frederick is saying, as a City fan, we City fans have to expect the criticism for other Premier League fans against sports washing. That's reality. At least City were a more genuine club before the takeover in 2008, before the money came in. Yeah, I mean, I think most Manchester City fans understand that. Like, they're playing on it. I think that's why they also don't chirp up as much, is because they know that their money, the way that they got it, the way that they've been successful is not really the same as everybody else. And so I think that's why they don't talk as much as everybody else. But, you know, I get that people are upset, but it's disingenuous to act like we're all on the same platform, and like we should have been able to go big in every single competition, go far, act like there would have been no trade-off, that if we had focused really heavily on Europa League and played our best lineup there, best lineup in the FA Cup, best lineup in the Carabao Cup, we would have been guaranteed a trophy. We also would have been fighting for the league, and there would have been no trade-off. It would have been perfect, and you would have been happy. There's no way. There's no way. So Yo-Yo says, no one expected or demanded Arteta's Arsenal to be challenging for a title this season. Pep, Tuchel, Klopp are the only ones who could be deemed failures for not winning the Prem. So yeah. But the takes have been mad today, so we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Love you guys so much, but make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Stay safe. You know, don't let the takes take you down, because some of the takes today, you guys, not good. But I get it. We're emotional. We feel like we may not win the league, but we're not playing on the same playing field as other teams. And like, that's just, you know, a thing. Doesn't mean that I don't expect us to win trophies, but yeah, let's be real. Love you guys. Talk to you guys soon. Bye, y'all.